This is a beer with Bunzerelly.
When I'm watching now that's ridiculously good is the Beatles thing you turned me on to.
Yes.
Freaking crazy. So I'm at the point, because you've seen it all, I'm 2 episodes in. I'm
Yeah.
at the point, the first episode is when they do the song Get Back.
Yeah, when they invented, yeah.
Which was the coolest thing I've ever. I sent a buddy of mine, and he plays instruments too. I sent a buddy of mine, older guy that plays instruments. You think he'd be so excited? He's like, "Oh no, man, I don't like the Beatles. I like blah blah blah." I'm like, "No, it doesn't. Who cares what you like? I've never owned a Beatles album in my life." I says, "But you're gonna watch this guy make up this song
on the fly,
from thin air, on the fly. You're gonna see his thought process. He's stressed out, and he even says he's like, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. Like it's out there already. Like the song actually exists.
It's so funny.
He just has to find it, and he just does, and he hits it. And right when he hits it, Ringo gets up, George gets up, I get up, everybody's cheering, and they
grab instruments.
And they grab instruments, yeah. And I didn't watch. There was actually a second YouTube video to it, but the first time you sent it to me, it didn't auto start the next one, or I didn't watch the next one, where it showed John Lennon coming in, and sitting down, and you can see by the pace he's walking, like he sees too that something happened.
We found something.
So you see that one?
Yeah. It's the magic. It's the creation of a song.
The creation of the song in itself, just that fact that we knew it. But for it to be such a big song. And then we're watching the movie too, and they're kids. And they're not even kids. They're like further along than, they've already been in it for a little bit. They already did like the 50s pop look thing where they had the matching haircuts. They're past that. They're even past Sgt. Pepper. So they're like into it. They're not kids. But I think of Paul McCartney and John Lennon like these, because I grew up hearing about them. So I think like these mythical things. I've never seen John Lennon talk more than 2 words.
No, that was the most I've ever seen him. It's like
I see what he's like as a person. I see them all talking as people, and it was so cool. And they're younger than us.
And I was watching it. I was like the second episode in, and Dad came up to visit, because you know how Dad is. He always likes some TV on. So I'm like, "Have us watching this if you don't mind." He goes, "Oh, hey, start this all over." I go, "I'll do it." We started all over from the beginning, and we watched it. We just, the part where he creates that song, because he's like, and he's going all over the place. So as he's finding the song, you're like, "Oh, you're almost there. You almost got it, Paul. Just keep going." It's like you're watching.
Yeah, and then he gets the words right away. As soon as he hits the riff, the words come. He's like, "Get back." You're like, "Holy."
Yeah, get back. And it's the only word he's got. He's just like, "Get back." They fill in.
And they're humming. I love how they're humming, and they're just, and that's such a smart thing, because I used to jam out with friends, and we'd have a few too many, so we'd be trying to make songs and stuff, and it never dawned on me, just stick with a couple words and then just hum the other ones.
Oh,
so think of the rest.
I won't tell you this song, so to not spoil it for you, but there's one part where somebody's writing a song.
Oh yeah, I'm in the second episode, so I seen that. Yeah, I forget what song it was, but
something. Okay, you saw it. Something. He goes, "Reminds me of a pomegranate," and that was another thing, because like George is writing something which is like an awesome classical song, and John's just like, "You got it, bro. You got it." Like they knew, like, you're onto something here, dude. Just keep going, and which is it's really cool to watch.
Yeah, and seeing them, and they're doing it, they're producing it, they're orchestrating it, they're managing their own band, which is the reason that they're broken up. And Paul said it from the beginning. He's like, we needed. He was saying it and he knew it, but he didn't want to just. He wasn't putting his foot down like he needed to. He was just hinting at it. But they did start saying at the end of this. I'm at the point to where they did hint that they're looking at someone else to manage them, but I think the damage was already done.
Yeah,
and I missed the part, and I don't know if you could remember it and remember not. You could carefully do it, but. Because I knew obviously that they broke up.
Yeah.
But when George walked out, I didn't see it coming at that time. But then all of a sudden, George is back.
Yeah.
And then nobody seemed to address it. Is that how it went, or they addressed it? I just spaced out for a second.
They show the I listened to a Mark Maron interview with Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
So Peter Jackson goes, "We don't know why George walked out, because everybody thinks it was. There's one point in the show where Paul gets a little hard on him about something."
No, I know why he walked out. No, I got that part.
No,
I know. Not to shoot it down. I don't know. I'm just saying the part because that was cool, and I could see, and George f***ed that up, because George told Paul, he says, because Paul told him, "Hey, put a little ditty over in this part.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm not Eric Clapton. He's like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Because I'm just not,
Yeah.
I could do rhythm, but I'm just not there yet. So Paul's like, okay, well, trying to, okay. So then Paul, the next time is like, okay, play this. And then he gets all quiet and then he quits the band right there. It's like, no, you told him to do that. You told him to tell you what to play. But I'm watching it and they're only like, they're 27, 28 in this movie at the time of this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just dumb stuff they're fighting over, just like everybody else. You're thinking like, oh, what's the big reason? What was it that happened? And Paul said it himself, like, wow, it's going to be so stupid later in life when we say, oh, why did they break up? Oh, well, because she sat on the speaker and annoyed this guy. It's like it's going to be such a stupid thing that does it, and it, I mean, there's more to it than that. Those one little incidents, but you can just see that no, it's just like a couple of dumb, stupid things.
Yeah.
That did it.
Peter said, yeah, you think it's over the argument, but apparently he goes, what I've heard, and I can't speak for George because George is gone, is George was having troubles at home. So people,
right.
And he goes, I asked Ringo about it, and Ringo, but these guys are remembering it wrong. I think it was the argument with Paul, but it was like, no, because George is there for a good 3 days after that argument with Paul. So it was just like he was having troubles at home. He was having troubles at home, and he's like, what am I doing here? And he was just, his head wasn't in the game. But what Peter Jackson said was, and I'm not going to spoil any of the show for you, he goes, look, I wasn't going to try to embellish. I wasn't going to try to, he goes, I'm just going to put you there.
Make sense of it.
I just want to put you in a time machine, because me and Dad were watching it. My wife comes in and just comes home from work. She starts watching it and she goes, was this filmed yesterday? Because the whole magic what Peter Jackson did, because I just want to restore the film. And I want to put you in a time machine. He goes, I didn't do, I could have done interviews with Paul and Ringo, but it would have taken you out of the moment. He goes, I just wanted to put you there. You're sitting in the room with the Beatles watching history unfold.
I don't want to hear someone's opinion on it where they've looked at it so many times. It's like, no, I just want to see what it's like to be in a room where in a week they pumped out so many crazy songs, and they pumped them out and they orchestrated them. Yeah. And you can see one take to the next, and they did it. And I'm hearing a take, and I'm like, I bet that's the take that they kept. And then they didn't do it that time, but they did it for the next song. They put on there, this is the take that.
Yeah, they do that. They tell you this is the one they used. This is the one.
Yeah, so I've been listening to them since, and I'm like, holy, it's almost like I was there. Like they were playing it. And I'm like, I seen when he came up with it, and I seen right before he started that little riff that George does. They were just talking about or something like that. Because you don't play guitar much, but you play it enough to where once you're in, you picked up an instrument the littlest bit. I don't know. I feel like you just appreciate the creativity that much more. Like for them to just come up and just jump from instrument to instrument. Yeah.
Just strum on a guitar and I found this bass rhythm. Do 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 do. I found the rhythm. Okay, I'm gonna start singing some words to it. And it's like, it's not like they wrote something and decided how it was gonna sound. It's like they did it all at the same time. And
you think it's such a big thing, so I've never even made an attempt. As a kid, I'm like, oh well, it's just so hard to do. You can't just come up with this stuff. And it's like, no, you just get some chords with the riff. And then it's just English class. They teach you poetry, how to write, so many syllables, whatever. Yeah. You just put some words to it. And they did it. And it was just one day to the next. And then it's on film on, day 3 or something.
I think the story behind that footage is something like Peter Jackson just happened to be in the right room with the right people. And they said, hey, we got this footage. Would you be interested in doing something with it? And he's just a Beatles fan. And he goes, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a look. And he says, because apparently a lot of that footage was used for this movie called Let It Be. And it just focused on the bad stuff or whatever it was. And he's like, well, I'm not going to make something about the Beatles that makes them look bad or just depressing. And he goes, no. He goes, I'm watching this. I'm like, this is a freaking amazing story. The ups and downs of it. And it has its conclusion, and they're like, wow. It's a, and he even said, he goes, I was cutting it. I said, I can't cut anymore. He goes, because if I cut anymore, it's going to be a crime to musical history. He said, and it's going to go in the vault for another 50 years. He goes, I got to preserve this. It was like a labor of love for the dude.
Yeah, they all chalked, so they must have chalked that footage up to the other movie, like, oh yeah, this is just the extra footage from this piece of junk that we made showing how they broke up.
Yes.
And it's like, no, this isn't how they broke up. I mean, you get to see how they broke up in here, up and close.
Yeah.
But no, this is, I mean, was it 2 weeks? A lot of the songs were already made.
Yeah.
And they're just fine tuning them. But like, and it was songs that I love by him, like Across the Universe.
Yeah.
And I'm only finding some Beatles songs recently.
Yeah.
And Across the Universe is one of those where I feel like I just found it like literally like months ago. And the song's, 50 years old or whatever it is. That song is so cool. And then even on the radio the other day, because I put Beatles on the YouTube or Pandora or something, I had them on there. I was looking for, I played Get Back. I wanted to hear, because I was thinking of the show.
Yeah.
So then I played other Beatles songs, and I was going to write it down and tell you. And just some random song comes on that I knew, and I just didn't know it was a Beatles song.
That's
they have
happened
a
to me.
lot of songs like that. Yeah, there's a lot of songs where, like, because every song they do is so different from the last one, and all their chords are hard as shit too. Like they're very like like you would think, like, because it's such a popular band, you think it's like Tom Petty where it's just the same three chords.
Yeah.
Real easy things to play, but still great and still cool. But no, their stuff is like intricate and complicated, and like when you see Paul, I mean, really, you should call it, instead of the Beatles, it should be called Paul McCartney Get Back.
Yeah.
Because seeing what a force that guy is.
Yeah.
And I think John Lennon getting shot and the whole thing with him and the press and all that has taken away from what a freaking amazing talent Paul McCartney is. And he was the driving force of it. You know what I mean?
I think John was equal as far as songwriting, because there are songs that all of a sudden are like, these are John's songs.
Oh yeah, his songwriting, and maybe his songwriting was better. Like Imagine, it's ridiculous, but the orchestrating and the arranging and all that is coming from Paul. Like I could see Paul McCartney making a musical.
And I think Paul took control of the band, like trying to get them together and stuff. Like, hey, let's work serious here. Let's do this. But like, I think as far as musical thing, and he was just like Paul. He would pick up a guitar, he'd pick up a piano, whatever it was. He was playing bass. Paul was playing bass. They'd harmonize on each other's songs. George
does a song in the second episode where the things that he contributed and stuff, like right after he quit, the point where he quit and he came back, the songs that he's doing, the stuff he's doing, and then like little riff things here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
So here's how I got to the Beatles. Like the same way you say you hear a song and you go, I didn't know it was a Beatles song. So me and the wife get into Guitar Hero. Like we got into Guitar Hero that was like our thing we would do together. And then we get like Guitar Hero Aerosmith and we're playing that. So I hear Guitar Hero or Rock Band Beatles is coming out. So I'm like, man, how's that game? So I just start looking at like clips on YouTube of it. And I'm like, that's a Beatles song? This is a Beatles song? And the cool thing about it's kind of dated now, like the graphics on it, but it's like they show you who's singing. So I'm like, oh, George wrote this song? And then I go look up George Harrison. I discover My Sweet Lord. And things like that. It was the same thing. You come across him and all of a sudden you start.
Oh, shit, that's him.
Yeah, you start digging deeper.
Yeah, that's right. I always I'm watching the show and I keep meaning to look up George Harrison songs. Yeah. Because when he died, I was like, I don't know a George Harrison song. I don't know any of them, but I do. I just don't know. I just hear them and I just think another oldies song or Beatles song.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My Sweet Lord.
I'll know now.
Something. And Here Comes the Sun. You know what I mean? Like his were far and few, but they were just always like solid. Like, yeah, that's him. And then the concert for Bangladesh, because Dad was actually at that concert. But I got the DVD for that. My wife got it for me because, like, for a Christmas present or something. I'm like, wow, Dad was at this concert. Like, I told you, we found him in the audience.
Yeah, you showed me.
Dad but he's playing something, and he's got Eric Clapton playing with him.
Oh, nice. And he was talking about how much a fan he was. That was cool. Because I'm watching, like, oh, I bet Eric Clapton is seeing this and being like, oh, wow, what a nice thing to hear. George Harrison talking about how good I am,
You got to watch the concert for George. It was like a year after he died, and all his friends come out and start playing his songs. So Eric Clapton is playing, Paul McCartney's playing.
Yeah, the guy I like too, John Mayer. I heard Eric Clapton said, he goes, John Mayer took the song and no one was really wanting to take it. They didn't think they could do it justice. And he's like, John Mayer just killed it.
Oh, here's one for you. While My Guitar Gently Weeps. That's a George Harrison song.
I'm looking at that and I've been waiting for if I was going to say the same thing. I didn't know that was him.
And Prince does a guitar solo on it. And Prince goes absolutely nuts. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Oh,
I'll check it out though.
You got to watch it. Watch Prince guitar solo While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Some time has passed. Special guest, we got Steve for the second segment. But
how's it going?
Bob, since finishing it, how do you feel about the whole the Beatles in general? I know you've been doing a lot of research behind the scenes.
I'm going back and looking at old interviews and everything, and it's just been real interesting to me to see, they're such a good band and such great writers, and for it to just end. And then for, John to get murdered afterwards, and there's no chance of them getting put together.
Yeah.
It's just so sad. It's such a sad thing, It's such a sad end to them. It's a shame, but it's a very interesting story.
It's funny the wormholes you get down when you're like researching and learning about them, because I learned about them, like we talked before about Beatles rock band and stuff. So I get in this wormhole. I start exploring people. I get sucked into George. And it kind of went down like the Traveling Wilburys road and like his catalog.
So did you guys talk about that your dad saw George?
Yeah, we did. We talked about that later. The concert from Bangladesh. He was there. My wife got me that DVD as a gift.
And where was that concert again?
It was in New York somewhere. He just hopped in a van. And the thing is, at the time, the rumor was like, hey, the Beatles are getting back together. That's all my dad knew. And my dad just hopped in the van because it was like, I want to go to this concert. All my friends want to go. So my wife bought me the DVD because I was just into that George. And that concert Bangladesh is him playing My Sweet Lord live. Here Comes the Sun, like all his whole catalog live. Eric Clapton is in the band with him. And I think...
oh, wow. I didn't know that.
No, Bob, it's a cool DVD. You got to watch it. But Billy Preston's on keyboard. Eric Clapton's there. A bunch of other guys, but it's like star-studded event. I think even Bob Dylan popped in for a little bit, but it was like this concert to raise.
It was the
money.
Tribute concert for George, right?
No, not the concert for George. This was one that George was trying to raise money for Bangladesh because they were having some like hunger issues or something, and he got
1971.
Yes,
1971 in New York at Madison Square Garden.
So my dad's a teenager. Right. Showed
it was obviously him.
It was obviously it was blatantly him.
By the time it came to me, and I was like, "Whoa, that's Dad.
Yeah,
that's for sure Dad."
And we showed aunts and uncles like, "Nope, that's your father." Like aunts that were older than him, younger than him, but it was like, "Nope, that's your dad." I'm like, "Well, all right, now I got this DVD of George Harrison and my dad's in it."
So he's obviously up close to the stage. I mean, he was.
It was like a random like crowd shot. It was like he's changing songs. I think it was before Bob Dylan came on. George had finished his song. And then like it just pans on the crowd clapping. But the funny thing is like Steve was saying in the concert for George, it's funny because you get that it's almost like the same group of people and they're all like 40 years older. And it's a whole different dynamic, like all these guys in these time periods and stuff.
Yeah, that was
because even his relationship with Clapton, it was like they'd be riding together and they'd say to Clapton like, "Hey, would you ever want to be a Beatle?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, it's a little out of my league." But then George Harrison respected Clapton, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not Clapton. I can't."
I think it was Clapton and George that had the relationship, right, in the Beatles, not Clapton, Paul, and John. It was Clapton and George.
They respected each other a lot.
It seemed like Clapton George. Yeah, it seemed like Clapton George.
Clapton respected George for being a Beatle, and George respected Clapton for just being a genius guitarist. I think George, out of the four, just appreciated musicians. Like he appreciated music. He just appreciated like Clapton was good. Billy Preston's good. Let's bring in Billy Preston. And then even when George left at one point, they were talking. They were like, "What do we do? Well, let's bring Clapton in, and that'll like do it."
I was watching a YouTube thing with Eric Clapton talking about his guitar. It's just YouTube just pulls up, kind of auto plays videos.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just because of some guitar thing I was watching. But he was talking about it, and then the story of it turned out to be that George Harrison gave him this guitar, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, really?
Like it turned into a George Harrison story, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what else with the two of them? And I heard this story. Dad told us this story but it was so long ago. And I didn't know anything about George Harrison really until I watched the special. That I didn't put two and two together when I watched the special. But those are the two guys that they had the same wife. I don't know the whole story, but I don't know the story at all. Yeah, you tell me. I don't know it, but
George, I believe he wrote something for. I think this woman has
George's wife.
Yeah, George wrote something for his wife. Okay. Eric Clapton wrote Layla for George Harrison's wife. It's like,
oh God,
your old man. That. Yeah, Layla got me out. He was like professing his love to her. And the third song is oh shit, hang on. There was one George. The final Eric Clapton song is like The Way You Look Tonight, or She Puts On Her Makeup.
Oh, You Look Beautiful Tonight.
Yeah.
I heard Eric Clapton tell that story. He was talking about he was waiting for his wife to get ready for work.
I said, darling, you look wonderful tonight. It's all, so those 3 hit songs are all about the same woman. And something happened where George Harrison basically.
Patty Boyd, was that his name as his wife?
I think so. That sounds familiar. But basically, Eric Clapton, I don't know if he stole George's wife or the marriage was ending anyway. That's another story like we talked before about Peter Jackson said, yeah, George walked out because he was having troubles at home.
Oh, and that he was referring to that.
Now we're thinking Patty Boyd. There was something going wrong, and even Patty Boyd ran into George and was like, hey, sorry how things went down. And George was like, I was a big old back then. My fault too. Whatever it was, this whole thing went down, and Eric Clapton and George Harrison were just cool the whole time. Weirdest dynamic, like the weirdest thing like ever. Like you saw, George Harrison led the concert for George. Eric Clapton ran the concert and even told Donnie Harrison, because Donnie was like, well, can I just sit in the audience and come up and play one song or two? And Eric Clapton said, no, you're either playing or you're not playing. There is no you come up for a song. It's like you're doing it. So that's why Donnie Harrison's just up there the whole time, just strumming his guitar.
It looks just like him.
I would love a DVD of the concert for George, because that is like Billy Preston swinging My Sweet Lord. Like that one's Paul McCartney playing the ukulele, saying something. It's like all that. That thing is beautiful.
I need to watch that again.
Yeah.
The concert for George is where it's at.
Well, let me ask a question real quick, Steve, because I know Joe's history with it, but did you know a lot about them before you watched this?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I guess like anybody, I've been a big fan. I used to, my parents used to have they had Abbey Road. I always remember that they had that at the house. So I used to put it on, listen to it. Yeah, I mean, I've been into them quite a long time, and I went off them.
But like not just the music, but even like these the breakup and the things like that, or any like I know there's all books written about the breakups and stuff.
There is. I kind of it's like almost been part of you growing up, I mean, I've grown up with them, even though they disbanded, before, but because your parents, like your dad, he's always playing music, and you pick up on their influences. My parents always had Beatles. I've got a couple of I've got a Hard Day's Night original 45 single. I've got a couple of, what else have I got? I think it's on the Decca label, I think. So I've got a couple of original single records that my parents have like handed down to me, and I've still got them. They're in the house now.
Something you can play them on. Do you even make them anymore?
No. Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's like collectors.
Yeah. My kids have got no clue. Well, what are these like black shiny things that you keep? Don't touch them. Leave them alone. They
don't even know DVDs. I'm sure.
Oh no, they don't.
My kid doesn't know tapes or DVDs. Nothing.
Right. Yeah. But I think they've been a big part of my life, really, growing up, and my everything. Yeah. But like I say, I did
listen to them a lot.
Yeah,
I knew their hits from the radio, but for whatever reason, Billy Joel and U2, and I remember, but for whatever reason, there wasn't any Beatles albums in the house.
Billy Joel, don't even get me started on Billy Joel.
that'd be next week's episode.
I'm not a Billy Joel fan. No, the Beatles, they've been such a part of my life, growing up with them, and I listen to them by choice, and as well now, so. I mean, I'm very selective on the Beatles songs I listen to. Like I say, I went off them for a while. I was beatled out. You know, like sometimes you just get.
I get those phases too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm like that with there's certain bands where, and I loved them then.
Right.
But I can't. Dave Matthews. I love Dave Matthews. I went to see him twice live, and we even like drove to like Georgia to see him from Florida one time.
Right.
And we were obsessed with him in his heyday, and I can't listen to him at all now. Just because I listened to him so much, I'm just sick of him. Yeah, and you know it's a shame because he didn't deserve that, but I just played it too much.
Yeah, I completely get it. And you just want to say, Dave, just finish the fucking song, will you? Please?
Oh my God! Yeah,
it's been going. It's 12 minutes already. Just finish. It's like you remember Fish? Have you heard of the band Fish? Kind of like the Grateful Dead. You know, they're a session band, and I was like, oh, shit, just finish the song, dude. It's like 18 minutes. I want to go for a piss. But yeah.
So here comes the saxophone solo again. Like, oh my God, Dave.
Exactly. No. But yeah.
But now the Beatles, what they have versus others is they have such a range. Because every time, if I look up Beatles or put on a Beatles station, which I wasn't doing a lot, but now I've been doing because I watched the show. And I keep texting Joe. I'm like, Joe, did you know this song was the Beatles? I knew the song. I didn't even know it was a Beatles song because you got three different vocalists singing them. So it always sounds different.
In the 80s, I used to listen to a band. I was into like punk music. There was a band called Susie and the Banshees. You probably never heard of them, but they did the song called...
Heard of them, but I don't know them.
Yeah, they did the song called Dear Prudence, and I heard that song and I thought, this is the best song I've ever heard. And I didn't even know it was a Beatles cover till like 20 years later. You know, so I was like, oh, the Beatles did Dear Prudence? I didn't even know that. So, yeah. I mean, I don't think there'll be anybody really that will get to the heights of the Beatles. I don't think, not in my lifetime.
I'll tell you one that got me was because I follow John Lennon on Facebook, so it's like, oh, here's.
Oh, is he still posting?
No, somebody
not for a while.
But somebody posted, goes, oh, here's the remastered version of Instant Karma. Well, we all shine on. I remember being a kid.
That's one of the ones I learned after his show.
Yeah,
I never heard.
I remember as a kid
seeing
there was a commercial that used that. I can't remember what the commercial was for, but I remember that was like a pop song in my head. I would hear it on the radio. Had no idea that was John Lennon. As far as John Lennon's solo stuff, I thought it was basically Imagine. That was the only song I knew of John Lennon that was like, or Give Peace a Chance. That was the only, and now I know John Lennon's Beatles songs when I first dipped into Beatles. Norwegian Wood. What was the other one?
You've got to hide your love away.
You got to hide your love away. Those two, it's like John in the sweet spot.
Going back to the movie, it was interesting how the dynamic together. You know, you could see that they were all having their own separate lives, couldn't you? You know, and they were. It was a job. It was going into the studio. Because like what I found really pretty eye-opening about that was, you know, Paul's there with his stepdaughter, Heather McCartney, that he inherited, from Linda. Mm-hmm. So and she's just in there in the studio. I mean, what a memory for her. I mean, imagine being in the studio while.
I wonder if she remembers it.
Yeah.
She's got to be, 4 or 5 in that video?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. She's just bouncing on Paul's knee, and, like, John Lennon's just, like, whispering her in her ear, and Ringo's goofing off with her. It's like, oh, my gosh, what a childhood. But the fact that they, obviously, they bought material to all these sessions, didn't they? They'd already, like, been working on stuff, and this was, like, kind of finalizing.
Yeah,
but the movie was to finalize.
A lot of it was like a lot of time was put into it. Yeah, a lot of stuff was the stuff the backlog that they had.
Yeah, but the movie was really about doing the show on the roof, wasn't it? I didn't think there was much of a story in it, to be honest. I thought it's more.
The story has ups and downs. There's a happy ending.
You think there's a happy end? You think that was a happy ending?
No, I think it's the
concert is the happy ending.
It's the rooftop concert because they are stressed. There's things happening with them, and
I didn't see a happy ending in that movie.
No, there was.
No, it is. No, it is. No, it's not just the rooftop concert. They had a target of hitting X many songs, and doing and turning into something, and they did it in like 10 days.
George and John had a conversation when Paul wasn't there, and were like, yeah, you know what? I'd like to do my own thing. I like to make my George album.
That was in the movie.
Yeah, and like I like to come back and do the Beatles thing, but explore myself. And Paul watched it and he goes, I wish, because yes, and you've said it, Steve, like Paul kind of grabbed the wheel when their manager died, but it was like, Paul was like, I wish I would have known they had this conversation. Paul saw it for the first time.
Devastating.
If I would have known, if I would have known they felt this way, because I would have said, okay, let's work some stuff out. Let's like George, make your album. John, make your album. We'll come back and do our Beatles album, but let's explore ourselves individually.
Well, I think Paul was probably ready to go in his own direction. I mean, from what he did afterwards.
No, I think Paul was trying to be the ringleader.
I don't think he was.
No,
I think he was trying to save them, and I think that they needed a manager and someone who would have heard all these things, because it was like, that's what was so sad about it, was that was one of several things where you're like, and I think that the happy story for this really is, and now I didn't see the documentary Let It Be, but just listening to the Peter Jackson interview where he discussed it, and from what me and Joe looked into it afterwards, it seemed like about a lot of this was, all right, this session was used in Let It Be to show, and Let It Be, the documentary, what they used it to, and they put us to show like, all right, here's why they broke up, and they pulled all this negative stuff out, to the extent that it seemed like the band members even remembered things differently because of how it was edited. And then they're like, no, here's what really happened. If you take all this footage and you don't just grab a little fight that just like a couple has fights, you know, this little dinky fight, it's like, no, it was a minute argument, and George walked off, but he came back the next day, and they had a great day the next day, and they didn't mention it, and they all forgot that this happened. And I was like, that's how I looked at it. It was like, oh, wait a minute, like, and I was thinking the same thing. I was going to ask you, I don't know if we talked about it before or not. I was like, I wonder if Paul, you know, what they're thinking now that they've seen this. And I bet he's smacking himself in the head like, oh my God, this could have all been avoided.
Actually, remember we were talking the other day and I was dissing Ringo and you stuck up for him. Like,
but it's funny. I never thought much of Ringo until I watched him with the band. He was like a glue.
He was jamming with the band,
and he's a glue that's like, hey, I'm gonna just hold the team together. Like I'm just gonna.
And I just see him as a guy that just hits the drums. He doesn't really.
I've seen a lot of things where they're complimenting him, and the compliments that they're giving of him, it's like, yeah, I didn't think of it. Like, well, that's what a drummer should be doing.
That's what a professional drummer does.
Harrison, yeah, it's what they do, and also like they don't know anything else besides having him for a drummer.
He got on with everybody.
Personality, and they didn't have to tell him to do anything.
Exactly. His personality got him through fame and fortune, in my opinion. Not his talent.
Yeah. Well, the short answer to what George said, he was like, because George was actually talking about himself on guitar, and he's like, yeah, he goes, I could see where I could be really good. I just haven't been able to put the time into just really taking my guitar playing to the next level. And he says Ringo's the same way as a drummer. He's good at it. He's like me. He doesn't practice.
He was probably
and now think he didn't say this, but you got to think they've been in the band since they were teenagers, so they're just went straight to playing. They skipped all the improving.
And you know what? Says, and we're all guilty of that in our own professions. You know, we could all strive to be a little bit better in our jobs. You know, and then try
for sure
and read that little bit more, go that extra chapter. So, anyway, that's how I feel. The movie didn't seem to shine on John as much as I was hoping, because Paul seemed to come
and I always think of John first when I think of the Beatles.
I think it's where John was at that point. I think it's just where John.
Well, he was out. He had a foot out the door.
It was the whole Yoko thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've all read about it, and it's like they were all pissed off that Yoko was like always there. But then I was watching that movie. It's like, well, hang on, Linda was like there too a lot in the movie.
Yeah, and even in the movie, Paul even says, he goes, yeah, after we break up, they're going to say it was Yoko's fault, but you know, she's not a bother at all. Paul himself says that, and then I see an interview with Paul. I'm guessing, but maybe 10 years later, where he's kind of blaming Yoko, saying the same thing he said that they were going to say.
Right.
He's like, yeah, well, you know, we're trying to shoot this album, and Yoko's there. What is she doing there?
Yeah.
Yeah, his perspective changed, or media got in his head because, you know,
Yeah, but
if I call Steve once a week and say Joe's an a-hole,
yeah, well,
Steve's gonna
wait a minute.
go, you know what?
You
Maybe
do
he
call
is an
me
a-hole.
every week and tell me that Joe's an a-hole. What are you talking about?
I
Bob?
knew it.
That was supposed to be our secret.
Am I right? Am I right? Yeah, I didn't even have to call him and say it that much.
Yeah.
But he's like, I know, Bob. I know. We all know. Everybody knows.
No,
But you hear it over and over. If you open the newspaper and it's Joe's an a-hole you see every day, then
You
you're gonna
start
thinking like,
believing
hey,
it.
you know what? You start believing it. Yeah. And I feel like that's what happened. And I don't know if it was time, if it was media, or if it was that Let It Be special that.
Well, I say, Bobby, I think you're right. I think it was media. I think it was media driven. The media had this hatred for Yoko because they thought she broke up the
Easy
Beatles
target.
by getting into by getting
She's the
into John's head.
outsider.
You know, it wasn't Linda's
An
getting
outsider.
It wasn't Linda's getting into Paul's head, because remember, Linda went on to make music with Paul. You know, she became a big influence in Wings. She was a huge influence.
Yeah.
In Paul's.
But yeah, they could
music.
easily, if you just from what we've seen, you could blame Linda as much for Yoko.
Yeah, but the obviously
Well, not really, but
yeah, but exactly. But the press, you know, the press drives people's minds, doesn't it? So yeah. So the movie was a great eye opener for me for the dynamic of how. But I enjoyed it. It was good.
Yep.
I want to thank our guest, Steve, for being here. Bob, always a pleasure doing this with you, bro. And we'll see you guys next time.
Good night, Joe.
There, guys.